Why does Frieren always hide behind Fern in fights? You see, when they first started traveling together, Frieren trained Fern non-stop, precision, timing, and controlling magic. But drills weren't enough, so she threw her into real battles, like the one against Qual, the Elder Sage of Corruption. During the fight, Frieren didn't lift a finger, she just watched from a distance. Fern fought alone, and even though she was terrified, it felt familiar, almost easy. Once she had the upper hand, Frieren finally decided to end it with a massive Zoltrak, but this wasn't just a one-off. Do you remember the dragon? Frieren knew spells wouldn't work and still told Fern to attack. The dragon woke up, Fern looked back, and Frieren was already nowhere to be found. She barely made it back and said, "I thought I was gonna die." These moments where it felt like no one would save her was what made Fern into the kind of mage who didn't need saving anymore. Why does no one know how Frieren looks, even though there are statues of her in every major city? You see, when Himmel's party defeated the Demon King, the world celebrated. Artists rushed to carve their likenesses into stone, but there was a problem. No one actually knew Frieren's face. She would often wear hoods or avoid spending too much time in towns. And unlike Himmel or Heider, she avoided public attention entirely. In one city, Himmel even complained that their statue of him looked nothing like the real thing. So imagine how far off Frieren's were. Even Sein points out that Kraft and his partner, who were legendary heroes, are forgotten the same way. These statues are all based on secondhand descriptions. How old is Frieren relative to humans? Obviously, we know she's lived for over 1,000 years while she was fighting Aura, but going by how she looks, she seems much younger than Kraft, even though they're the same race. And if you compare her to Serie, it gets even stranger. Serie looks far younger than Frieren despite being much older, which shows that appearance doesn't really line up with age for elves. One way fans try to estimate Frieren's age is by looking at flashbacks with Flamma, where she was noticeably shorter. This means in those 1,000 years she went through a growth spurt and puberty. But assuming elves grow like humans doesn't really make sense. If they did, baby elves would need decades just to walk or even speak. We also know the goddess of this world was last seen 1,500 years ago, which Frieren doesn't believe in, maybe because she's never actually seen her. And since her village was destroyed about 1,000 years ago, she might have been very young then, maybe the equivalent of a 5 or 6-year-old. So where does that leave us? Honestly, there's no way to pin her down to a human age. But if Leonardo DiCaprio were to guess, she's probably younger than 25. Did you notice this detail in Frieren Beyond Journey's End? In the scene where Himmel gives Frieren a ring, look closely. Did you catch that? Behind them, you can see a clock tower standing right in the middle of the frame. Why is that so important, you ask? Because it's not just background art. The clock tower symbolizes the one thing separating the two of them: time itself. Himmel's life, fragile and fleeting, runs on borrowed time. Frieren, on the other hand, will live for centuries, and no amount of magic can change that. The placement of the tower is deliberate. It stands directly between them as a quiet reminder that no matter how close they are, their time together is painfully short. Who's the strongest amongst the new first-class mages? Let's rank them. At number 6, Land. He can create near-perfect clones of himself, which is great for outnumbering opponents, but the clones are not durable, and he only showed one attack spell, a short-range shock. With no real long-range offense, he sits at last place. Next, at number 5, Ubel. Her Rail Zidon is terrifying. If she can imagine something being cut, she can cut it. Her speed is insane, and she's a little mentally unstable, but I can probably fix her. She thinks like a pair of scissors. Scissors can cut cloth, but not stone. That is why Berg's torso and legs got divorced. At number 4 is Werble. He could have easily killed Ubel during the exams. Sorganel's only weakness is not having vision on the enemy, which brings us to number 3, Fern. One of the fastest casters in the series and a master of mana concealment. Even as a child, Frieren struggled to detect her presence. Werble definitely wouldn't have seen her coming before he got Zoltracked. At rank 2 is Mami. She wields powerful binding and mental interference magic. First place is Denken. His battle experience and tactical thinking are insane. By the time you realize you're in his trap, it is already over. What exactly does Frieren do here? Well, personally, I am leaning towards pure visualization of getting the target the hell away from me. We all know that in order to cast anything in this universe, the mage needs to know the spell and have enough mana for it. But you see, the most important part is to actually visualize it. Fern did not react to the attack because she couldn't recognize it. She most likely did not sense any mana from Frieren's clone. Meanwhile, in this exact episode, Ubel explained her spell in simple terms of rock, paper, and scissors. She cannot visualize cutting through rocks, so she can't. But she can, however, visualize cutting through cloth, which is why Berg got the "nah, I'd win" treatment. Why Serie is so interested in Denken. At first, she saw a mage way past his prime, a former Imperial Court mage who had spent decades in both brutal wars and the political battles that came after. In her eyes, his glory days were behind him, not ahead. However, that's far from true, because you see, in the first exam, Denken burned through his mana during the fight with Frieren. With almost no time left, most mages would have accepted failure, but Denken didn't. He went after Stilla barehanded, beating the living shit out of a younger mage. That alone showed he still had ambition, but there was more. Serie later asked what went through his head the moment he saw her. Most mages are too stunned by her to even speak, but his answer wasn't awe or fear. It was that he wanted to fight her. That single thought told her everything. Here was someone who refused to bow, even to one of the greatest mages alive. What spells did all the first-class mages ask for? When a mage passed the exam, Serie granted one spell of their choosing. We already know Fern chose a spell to clean clothes. But what did the others pick? The saddest one was definitely Denken's choice. The first is Ubel. She asked for a spell to find her sister. The same sister we briefly saw teaching her how to sew. For someone known for her ruthless precision, that choice was surprisingly wholesome. Next, Land's wish came from grief. He asked for a spell to locate his family's remains. Falsh picked a spell to change his voice freely. Is he a freak? Why would you even need that spell? Denken chose Mistelzela, a spell that reverses curses relating to his wife. And Sensa picked a spell that would finally let her sleep soundly. I mean, after what Ubel did to Berg in front of her, she kinda needs it. What spell would you have picked? What exactly is this emblem that Frieren is holding? It might look like nothing more than an old pendant, but in truth, it represents one of the greatest honors a mage could ever receive. You see, this is the holy emblem once granted by the Court of the Sacred Staff. Long before the modern Mage Guild, this council stood as the highest magical authority. They judged which mages were worthy to be recognized as true great mages. Only a handful across centuries ever earned the emblem. The court oversaw the use of forbidden magic, guarded humanity from demon threats, and even determined which mages could be entrusted with the most dangerous spells. To carry their emblem was proof of mastery, reputation, and trust. Frieren received hers generations ago. By the time of the first class exam, most had forgotten what the emblem even meant, but Lernen, a veteran mage, knew its weight. He allowed Frieren to sit for the exam based on the emblem alone. That little piece of metal in Frieren's hands isn't just an ornament, it's living proof that she once stood among the most legendary mages in history. What exactly does Frieren do here? Well, personally, I am leaning towards pure visualization of getting the target the hell away from me. We all know that in order to cast anything in this universe, the mage needs to know the spell and have enough mana for it. But you see, the most important part is to actually visualize it. Fern did not react to the attack because she couldn't recognize it. She most likely did not sense any mana from Frieren's clone. Meanwhile, in this exact episode, Ubel explained her spell in simple terms of rock, paper, and scissors. She cannot visualize cutting through rocks, so she can't. But she can, however, visualize cutting through cloth, which is why Berg got the "nah, I'd win" treatment. Is Frieren actually super rich? You'd expect a 1,000-year-old elf who's faced legendary demons and traveled far and wide to be loaded with wealth, right? Well, not exactly. Frieren doesn't care about money. For example, the Duke here saying, "I have a job for you and I will pay you well."
No chance.
But Frieren immediately declines. What she actually hoards are rare, ranging from grimoires, spells, folk magic, and magical artifacts. In Season 1, Episode 5, she and Fern hunted a solar dragon not for treasure, but for the grimoire in its nest. But it was all to get a spell that sees through clothes.
So small.
Those useless spells? They're actually insanely rare. Most mages wouldn't even know they exist. It's like owning a first edition Charizard.